Hi, everyone. It's Alexander Fernandez with another edition of Video Games Real Talk. I am super excited today to be coming at you with Gabby Dizon from Yield Guild Games, longtime friend of mine that I've known forever. Gabby, how you doing?
Hey Alex, super happy to be here.
Oh, dude, I am so excited that you're here, man. I mean, honestly, like you're OG, you're OG video game developer, you're OG crypto, and now you're OG. Well, actually, I wouldn't say that. You're like the godfather of basically play to earn. How the
yeah,
hell did you do that?
yeah, it's been a really fun and weird last 3 years, and yeah, we've been in games together for a long time, and it's interesting to kind of go through that journey and see how we got here.
No, absolutely, man. And that's what I'm happy about is to have that opportunity to speak to you about this because, one of the things that's hitting the industry right now is that, like everything in video games, like when something it picks up and it goes super fast. And so I would really like to get into everything. But first, I want to unpack you,
Mhm.
your journey to get to here. I mean, you're a game developer from way back when. So why don't you tell everyone how you got here and what you're up to right now?
Yeah, sure. So I actually entered the game industry back in 2003. So I joined the team that was making the first game out of the Philippines back then. And yeah, it was a PC game, RPG. There weren't a lot of materials on the internet back then, as there were now. And we kind of just really figured out how to make a game as we went along. And those were really fun times, all the way up to kind of burning the master on a CD, boxing it ourselves like that was how we started in 2003. And fast forward to 2014, I started a mobile game studio called Altitude Games. Two of my co-founders were actually from the same team that I worked with back a decade ago. And yeah, we started making free-to-play games for Android, iOS phones. And it was during this time that we were making these games. And free to play is a very hard business, and we started taking a look at blockchain in actually 2017. Heard about Ethereum and the concept of smart contracts or programmable money, and it was a very interesting concept back then. Bitcoin had come out several years before, but the main use case in the Philippines then was remittances. And I wasn't really a fintech guy. I'm a game developer. So it wasn't until we started playing with smart contracts that I got really interested in blockchain technology. And while we were playing around with this in late 2017, CryptoKitties came out and popularized the non fungible token, or an asset that lives in a blockchain, which is like a public, immutable database that lives outside of the game itself. So, yeah, this is really a radical idea at that time, and I was really blown away that the item could basically live separately from the game itself. And yeah, I've just been really kind of deep in the NFT rabbit hole since.
So let me ask you something. What is the one thing that struck you when you got into this entire crypto NFT gaming space that was so different from the traditional video game space?
Yeah, so I think there was just a real a culture around, let's experiment on something that is completely new. The where free to play was at that time had been kind of reducing itself to a formula of, like what is the right theme and gameplay so that you can get a certain type of retention. Everything was being reduced down to a formula, and it felt like the blockchain space itself in NFT was completely wide open in a way that people haven't seen until maybe the early iPhone days, when people were trying to figure out how to do app development.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, and it was really just great where it's a white space where people could play around, experiment with different things. There's such a lot of promise, and even now, as things are starting to take off in the blockchain and play to earn space, I think there's still a lot of room to discover new things.
So, Gabby, your journey as a game developer, like you said, you started back in '06, and you're in the Philippines and you're looking around. Help us understand something here because, when we talk about the excitement and the energy of blockchain gaming, NFT gaming, and really the fact that it's open ended and there's no one controlling it. That's a far cry from what it was in '06 in video games, and let alone even what the video games industry is right now. Why do you think there's such freedom for the developer? There's freedom for everyone. It seems like everyone can make money. Is that just a function because it's new, or is it people don't understand it? I mean, how are you seeing that?
What I love about crypto is that like there's a culture of being remote and global where people don't judge you based on where you are making the product. Like this is a struggle for mine, starting in the game industry from the Philippines, where there's really this perception that if you're making games from the Philippines, then you can't make product, you can't make IP, you can make assets, you can be an outsourced developer, but
Mm,
you're not the guy actually thinking of what to do. You're the guy executing on that. And I really fucking hated that. I
yeah.
wanted to be in a space where we were respected for what we brought to the table. And there's this openness in crypto, and it probably goes back to kind of the roots of Bitcoin with an anonymous developer where you show up as you are and then you contribute to the space. And some people are even anonymous or pseudonymous, but people didn't really care what country you were from. People cared about what you had to contribute to the space, and that was really a breath of fresh air.
I mean, that's so incredible. And I really want to talk about what you're saying right there because honestly, the kind of neo-colonialism, imperialism, video game slavery, the way I look at it, basically, which was exploitation of emerging markets for the sake of very few, I mean, that really ran through the heart of Asia, LATAM, really wherever basically developers and publishers could go. And it was a shame because honestly, it became a race to the bottom perpetrated by a few that basically realized that if they could basically push people and push their prices to the bottom, they would just effectively exploit passion economics. And I know that there's a difference in terms of passion economics, but passion economics in the video games industry is your passion, someone else's economic benefit, while you basically get the short end of the stick. And unfortunately, basically, the video games industry, that seemed to be par and course for the past 20 years, where publishers and developers would go around to the far flung regions of the universe, or in this case, all over the world, and try to find people who were just so happy to work on games that there was like, hey, kid, here's a nickel. Why don't you make me something? And what you just described, that feeling of basically being judged based on where you lived, not what you could do, I mean, you're not the only one. I saw that all over the place. Hell, when we were in Amsterdam, we used to see that all the time. People were like, "Oh, you're in Holland." This is before people realized that the Netherlands were basically producing great games, but
Uh-huh.
even that was happening. And what I love to hear about what you just said is that crypto, blockchain, they don't seem to have those same ignorant ways of thinking because of the roots. Now, let me ask you something. You're in a place where basically you have a tremendous amount of people and a tremendous amount of energy. Why is the Philippines so into basically blockchain, crypto? What are those dynamics? Why is that happening?
So interestingly, Philippines had always been a kind of huge population in social games, social networks, going all the way back to early Friendster in the early 2000s, early Facebook, and a lot of the social games. Actually, there's a lot of Filipino population in them because Filipinos are inherently social, love to chat online with their peers, but
Yeah.
they'd been kind of an invisible part of the population because they quote unquote weren't monetizable because they weren't buying much in in-app purchases, so you couldn't run
Mm.
a lot of ads and make money. So they were just kind of the I would say like the people that were kind of filling up the population so that the whales could come in and spend money and kill them, basically in game. And what happened with Axie Infinity and Play to Earn, wherein people in the Philippines started playing this game and started earning money on par with everyone else that had access to this game and this virtual economy, meant that these people were kind of lifted to the surface where each person who was once counted as just a statistic, a daily active user, now becomes a person with a voice and an identity. So that's why you're seeing a lot of Filipinos come out in kind of more prominent in the play to earn ecosystem.
Now, we have a lot of listeners out there that are executives, strategic development directors, or even heading inside of head of corp dev. I would love it if you could take our audience through how the entire thing works. Because, one thing is say, oh, yeah, I know crypto, I know blockchain, but, that's like saying I know free to play and it's, 2009 and actually no one does. Can you take us through this, like just the overall concept? How does it work? And ultimately, the excitement that comes from it?
Sure. So, a play to earn game is a game that makes use of a blockchain to kind of where you put the economy of your game. So, blockchain means you have fungible assets such as tokens, which could be kind of similar to in game currencies, and NFTs as unique assets in the game, right? So, putting your assets in the blockchain means they're not inside the application or a database itself. They're in a kind of global, immutable database where anyone can read them and you can exchange them easily for value for currency such as Ethereum, for example. That means if I have a game that uses NFTs, those NFTs are immediately transferable to other people for Ethereum, which can be ultimately exchanged for US dollars or whatever fiat currency. That means that your game economy is really underpinned by real value, and this changes the way that people take kind of view their actions in the game. If you're doing stuff in the game that earns you real money, then yeah, then people would want to do more of it. So this started happening in the Philippines last year. If you played a game called Axie Infinity, which is roughly a Pokemon like game where you have three NFTs called Axies that you battle against other people and you win a match, you earn this token called SLP. So SLP or Smooth Love Potion is an in-game currency that can be tokenized to as a crypto token in your wallet. That means when it becomes a crypto token, it can be exchange for ultimately US dollars or pesos. So it has value. So now we have people around the world who are playing these play to earn games using these NFTs, earning tokens that have real value and exchanging them for fiat money across the world. And yeah, this is what play to earn looks like. And now more and more games are following the lead of Axie Infinity to develop their economies around blockchain and play to earn.
So help us understand this. So effectively, SLP, the Smooth Love Potion, is an in-game currency that
Yeah.
then basically has itself pegged to the AXS token, or is that separate from effectively its own, like it's priced its own way? How does that work? Just so people understand around what those two things are.
Sure. So, what gives the SLP token value is that there's a utility to it inside the game. You need a SLP token as a cost to breed new axes. So, there's a type of player in the game called a breeder that breeds axes and sells them to other players. The big difference of play to earn is that the developer themselves rarely sell anything to the player base. It's the players that create the assets of value inside the game and then sell them to other players, right? So now you're giving your players the opportunity to create stuff inside the game and earn an income from it. So I need SLP tokens to as a cost to breed new axes if I want to either use those axes to play the game or to sell them to other people. So now there are people like who are breeders who are buying SLP. So there's just kind of a free floating exchange rate where people are buying SLP from people who are producing them.
How does the market price that? Are the players then pricing their activities, or is it just completely dependent on the SLP token? Like, I mean, the token seems to have its own price point, but what about my hours? How do I know what I should be getting paid?
So the token is put on a decentralized exchange like a Uniswap or an exchange like a Binance, where the natural kind of supply and demand between people who want to buy and sell the token kind of determines the price for it. So it's completely market driven and not set by anyone, not by the developer and not by the players. If there are people who are willing to buy the token for the price that the players are selling at, then the exchange happens. And as a result, you see that the price fluctuates depending on the supply and demand of the token itself.
So now you were saying that basically in the Philippines, this has been taking off. Like, before effectively people were happy to basically just be social and be talking to each other. Do you remember the moment when it became clear that you could earn money by doing this? Was it sudden, or was it just like, a long flow of water, like, like a leaky pipe? When did it become clear that this was going to happen?
So Axie implemented the SLP system back in January of last year, and in the first few months it was really worth almost nothing and people were just accumulating SLP so they could breed more. What happened was that in September last year, a lot of people started streaming into the Axie server, and these were people from the rural areas of my country in the Philippines. And these were people that found Axie Infinity online. They were jobless, stuck at home with no job, and pretty desperate for a way to earn money. And they found this game as a way to earn money. And when they started figuring out the game, playing Axie, earning SLPs, selling it back to Philippine pesos, they discovered that the income opportunity from this game was much better than the local job opportunities that they had, where the minimum wage in rural Philippines is probably something like $200 a month, and they're earning something like $400, $500 a month. So that's when the player base of Axie just really started to increase.
So take me to Yield Guild because around this time, I mean, you're watching this. I mean, you're
I was
there.
playing Axie 4 hours a day then.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So explain that because basically, like, you know, what did you just get? Like, did it just strike you like, oh my gosh, Eureka, this is it, or like, I don't know, were you having some chicharron and it happened? I mean, tell me, how did it happen?
So I actually had an idea for kind of blockchain gaming guild, or think about it like a World of Warcraft guild that owned its own assets, that had its own bank account as far as maybe 2, 3 years ago. But it wasn't viable because there was no game to base it on. And what happened in Axie was pretty remarkable. At the same time that players started streaming in, a person in the community figured out that you could lend your assets out to other people, because there's two types of logins in Axie: an account level, like username, password login, and kind of crypto wallet based login. Someone figured out that I could give you my username, password. You could access my account with the Axies, play with them, but you couldn't run away with the assets that were in that wallet, because I didn't give you the wallet access. So that's how the lending, or what it's called the scholarship system, was born. We started scaling this idea that we could amass a lot of Axies, breed them, and then lend them out to people who were willing to play and wanted to earn money but didn't have the money to buy these Axis up front. I mean, Axis now, a good team probably costs something like $1,000, and a lot of people wanted to make money but didn't have $1,000 up front. So that's where the idea for Yield Guild came in. Was that we could scale the kind of scholarship idea and create a guild as a DAO that owned assets that could lend them out to players and play these games and do a revenue share on the value being produced.
What happened to that person who figured this out? I mean, are they just like, does history remember them, or did they just
Oh
this
yeah, yeah,
cool
yeah.
idea? Yeah, who was
AK.
that?
So his name is AK, and he's actually a core member, like an Axie OG, and he still has like maybe 600, 700 scholars now, and he's doing
That's
pretty well for himself.
Yeah, no, that's I mean, listen, I mean, that remember that name, everyone. That's like a legend right there, you know? That's I don't know if that was a bug or a feature. Was that intentional by them, or that how did they actually think to do that, or was that just randomness that they
So
actually allowed that to happen?
the funny thing was, like, the Sky Mavis team never really like created a system for borrowing or scholarships, because of how the game was architected. Someone in the community just found a way to do asset lending, and this is actually one of the core strengths of Sky Mavis and the Axie team, is that they've always viewed their community as co-creators. So they're not just consumers; they're not just there to buy stuff from you. They've always like held the community in high regard and always treated them as co-creators, such that when this system started happening, other developers may have clamped down and said, hey, that's against terms of service, this is against the rules. They let it happen, let it flourish, and Axie became a billion-dollar company in less than a year because of that.
So I want to jump in on this for a second because ultimately, right there, you just nailed it. Most developers, most publishers in pure play video games would have been like, I remember gold farming,
Yeah.
can't do that, right? Why do you think developers now, especially in the community, understand it so differently than say basically entertainment game developers? You would think, oh, we make billions of dollars making games, but heaven forbid we let the community do anything. Why? Where does that come from?
Yeah, so I see the movement in Web3 and communities as kind of a natural evolution of where we were with user-generated content in the last maybe 15 or so years. Apparently, with Web3, if you enable your community and give them ownership of the value that is being produced, it actually ends up being a lot more powerful than trying to control them or just having a centralized team control the product. And you're seeing that happen across the board, with Axie being a billion-dollar company in 3+ years because of the strength of its community, with Yield Guild being 1 year old and being worth something like $6 billion now, which is larger than most publishers that have been around for the last 30 years. You're just starting to see really the power of community and co-creation. And honestly, I think we have a lot further to go.
No, absolutely. So, as a OG developer, you're sitting here and you're like, okay, let's try this out. I'm playing, let's go. The moment you realize you're sitting on a multi-billion-dollar company, when did it strike you that you're like, oh shit, this is like beyond, I mean, that this is beyond, you've been in video games at that point in time, like what, 17, 18 years,
That's right.
in the trenches. When does it dawn on you that like there's an easier way to make money and it's a lot more fun?
Yeah, it was really insane. The last 12 months have been a real whirlwind. Whereas I would say that, I mean, we've had some pretty good experiences in game development, especially with good partners in the last 16, 17 years. But like, it always been a slug. And then in the last year, everything had just accelerated, where this new business model opens up that is enabled by crypto, that empowers community. And then we had several rounds of fundraising in very quick succession. Like, we raised 3 rounds with increasing valuation in the first 7 months, leading up to having our token sale in July and having us jump very quickly to a multi-billion valuation after that. Like, it's been really dizzying, and honestly, never would have predicted like that things would go this fast. I think it was just the right time for this to happen.
And the thing is, Gabby, it's like, you and I we've spoken a lot offline, and when you talk about the rural person, the individual who basically gets to get more in a month playing a game than backbreaking work. Let's talk about the social economic impact of play, basically play to earn.
Sure.
Let's talk about it. What
Yeah.
do you think?
So
Where's it going?
one of the criticisms of crypto had always been that, it's only for rich people who could have afforded to buy Bitcoin or Ethereum early. How about the people who didn't have access to it or who don't have money now? And what we're seeing is that play to earn is the ultimate equalizer to give people access to the crypto economy, no matter where they're from around the world. So now you're giving people an opportunity to earn crypto with their time and their skill, instead of having money in the first place. And then they earn some money out of it. And now they're part of the crypto ecosystem. They actually learn to be investors, where, like, if I earn some SLP from playing Axie, maybe I'll start off putting food on the table, paying back debt. And then once you go through several cycles of that, then you start thinking about, how do I become an investor? Do I buy the AXS token of Axie Infinity? Do I buy some Ethereum? Do I buy some virtual land in the game? People actually start thinking like an investor. And this is not only happening in the Philippines, this is happening in Indonesia, in Thailand, in Venezuela, in Brazil, where people are really getting access to the crypto economy and the benefits of it, no matter where they are across the world, from playing a video game. It's massively powerful.
How do you see governments reacting to people playing this? I mean, do you think this is something that they'll just be like, hey, you know what? Just another way to get remittance. No big deal. It is what it is. I mean, have you seen anything on that front that gives you any positive thought or concern?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of misunderstanding of what play to earn is. I mean, we've started dialogue with Philippine government, different stakeholders. There's the tax bureau, who's trying to figure out what a smooth love potion is. There's the SEC, who's trying to figure out how people are playing games are earning money from them. To like local governments, like congressmen and mayors, who want to give access to their constituents so that they can start earning money, and hopefully vote for them in next year's elections. So there's a lot of education involved. And I think ultimately it boils down that play to earn is not just playing games for entertainment anymore. Sure, you're playing a game and it's fun, but since you're earning value, it becomes like a digital version of gig economy work, like maybe an Uber or a Grab. But the big difference is that you also have the opportunity to earn ownership of the network that you're participating in, maybe in the term of in like AXS tokens in Axie Infinity, or the YGG token for Yield Guild. So that means you can be a part owner of the network that you're contributing value to, and it's not just the kind of investors and the founders who are getting rich off the work that you're creating.
So what it sounds like is that it's a community that basically self-reinforces and shares the wealth, spreads it through everyone who participates. It's not, how can I say, extractive, but it's
Yeah,
basically
it's
everyone
very
is putting
participative.
back in. Participative. Okay, so let's talk about that for a second because I'm a game developer, and I'm sure there's quite a number of game developers listening to you right now. They're like, I'm gonna get in there, I'm gonna make this happen. I've mastered free to play. Tell me why I'll fail.
Okay, so yeah, there's some key differences with doing a free to play game with play to earn, and I would say that a lot of the skills in terms of designing virtual economies actually works out well. The biggest difference is that free to play is kind of by nature extractive. You're playing this game for entertainment, and I need to create a funnel such that some of you will just pay an outrageous amount of money while enjoying this game. Playtern is different in that you're designing an internal economy. So each of it, I think of it like Axie itself. It's like a standalone digital nation where people are putting in money because they're getting something out of it. It might be that I'm investing in SLP to breed more Axies. It might be that I like the Mystic Axie, so I'm paying a lot of money for these collectibles. And then some of that money gets converted into value that pays people when they go farm SLP, right? So the way to design these economies is kind of more similar to creating a kind of a small country. So measured in GDP, like what are the inputs coming in, what are the outputs, how are you enabling people to earn some value, and kind of how is that trading going on? So it's not anymore the developer just selling stuff to its players. It's being able to facilitate an economy where people are creating something of value, people are investing time and effort and money, and some people are able to take that out.
So then if I'm a developer now and I'm hearing you, I'm like, okay, so I got to learn how to build. Basically, I have to build a country. I have to build an economy,
Yeah.
facilitate. I got to be participatory. I got to basically enhance you, help you get there. What are the things that I should be doing? Like, if I'm going to go into this, what are the things I should be doing as a developer to at least not guarantee, because there's no guarantees, but at least try to be successful?
Sure. So I think that participating in Web3 communities is very important. So you don't just kind of design from an ivory tower. So joining a DAO, going in the Discord, figuring out what makes like token ownership pretty powerful. I think these are things that are important for people to experience. Community management is very different in a typical free to play game than it is in like Web3 and Play to Earn, where your community managers are actually kind of the living heartbeat of your community. They're super important, and they allow your community to really expand and grow, and have that network effect that makes the community a lot more valuable. Um, you also need to design to have economy design in a way that's different from free to play, where yeah, again, you're allowing players to create value inside the game. So these are the things that you need to think about before kind of diving in. Don't just make a free to play game and kind of tweak it a bit so that it looks like it's play to earn. You really have to experience it for yourself before you go ahead and do it. And I must say, that MMO designers probably have the most experience when it comes to this. Games like Eve Online actually have almost everything that you need for a successful blockchain game, except for the cash out part. So people who come from that kind of deep MMO design experience are actually, I think, have an edge long term.
So when I'm hearing this and I'm looking at it, obviously you spotted an opportunity. You went in there. You leveraged years of experience, key business insight, and I mean honestly, to see something like this, you nailed it. Where does Yield Guild go? Because you're not just about Axie. I mean, tell us about that. Where are you guys going as an organization?
Yeah, so For Yale Guild, we want to be the community that onboards the next billion people into Web3 and crypto via Play to Earn. So that means that we're setting up communities across the world, across Southeast Asia, India, Latin America, and other places to have communities that can recruit people and play games like Axie. We've also invested in assets in other games in virtual worlds so that people can come in and do different jobs in the metaverse. So now we've invested in assets in a total of 15 games. We have land in the Sandbox and League of Kingdoms. We have cars in Formula One Delta Time. We have heroes in Thetan Arena. So we want to be like enable people to do whatever they want to do within these games and virtual worlds, and kind of be the conduit for people to enter the economic opportunities in the metaverse.
You keep talking about Web3, and obviously we've heard Web3 is also known as the metaverse. How real is the metaverse to you? Is this real or is this just some fancy thing? What's your take?
Okay, so the way I think about metaverse is I'm really invested in making the open metaverse a reality. And when I say that, the open metaverse is this kind of shared kind of o- shared online economic reality where people can do different things and get paid and have value and ownership in them. I'm not as focused on, for example, is it going to be in VR or AR? Is it going to be through a mobile device? It's really more of what is this shared reality that we're going through where we can have real assets online and be able to share them with each other. So it might be in the form of NFTs. You might experience them through a kind of social layer, like Twitter or Discord, or maybe new versions of that. You may be able to interact with them in a play to earn game. You may be able to experience them in VR, but ultimately you have your kind of economic backbone online and natively digital, and it's something that you can share with communities across the world.
So, with where do you see play to earn going?
So
What's the future?
I see play to earn as the future of work and the future of the game industry. I mean, not every game needs to be play to earn. I can just enjoy a time waster or just have a good narrative experience. But for games that have an economy aspect to it, it just wouldn't make sense for you to pour hours and hours into a game and not be able to get any value out of it. And I see this as really massively expanding the market size of the game industry itself, where the game industry is probably something like $120 billion now. But what if these games and virtual worlds are where people now do work? What if you can do the equivalent of going to the bank inside the game? What if you can do the equivalent of like crafting, being a real estate salesman, being a content creator, all of these happening in virtual worlds? Then this massively expands the kind of economic opportunity inside of quote unquote video games, because people aren't just doing them for pure entertainment anymore. I think once you put kind of an economic structure around these virtual worlds, then it really opens up, and there's so much more that you can do with them. And you can build massive economies online.
So there's always the haters out there that are like, "Oh my God, this should about having fun, and we're traditional video game developers. We should only concern ourselves with extracting maximum latinum from the developer." I work for a publisher that starts with two letters. I don't know. I'm like, money. Like, come on. Like, what is it? What is it that basically makes it hard for people to understand this? Do you think it's just a bridge too far? Is it a generational thing, or is it just I have to learn? What do you think that is?
There's a lot of cognitive dissonance around play to earn. It's also built on different concepts that you would need to believe in. So, for example, a lot of people are anti blockchain because they feel like it's undermining the kind of economic system of fiat, US dollars, and all of that. And then on top of that, you have the concept of NFTs, which are these unique assets that live on the blockchain. And then you're putting them inside video games, and then you're using them to earn money. So, it's actually a lot of kind of concepts rolled into one. And there are people that might not believe in certain steps. There might be people who are anti-blockchain, anti-NFTs for one reason or another. Or there might be people who just think that video games should just be for leisure. They should not be for earning money. So I think there's a lot of cultural uh, aspects there that people are not used to, and there's a lot of cognitive dissonance around that. But we've seen this happen time and time again. Like free to play, there's a lot of kind of resistance around it. App Store, there's a lot of resistance around it. Like mobile games were not real games 15 years ago. So honestly, I think as something just gets bigger, people just accept them, and some people are just there earlier, and some people figure them out later.
So you're going to bring on the next billion people, and these billion people are going to come and play and earn an income through the tools and through your platform. What is your hope for the next billion gamers and professionals that come in? Because they're coming from emerging markets, Latin America, Southeast Asia, Africa. What do you think that's going to do for video games and play to earn?
Yeah, so my hope is that it levels the playing field for anyone coming into this industry, where now I come in, I can be a player, I can be in esports, I can actually be a game developer, I can be a content creator, and have an equal opportunity to be rewarded for my creativity and hard work. Of course, I still need to show up. I still need to get the work done, but now it shouldn't matter whether I'm in Brazil or in the Philippines or in America. Like if I show up and do the work, I better be rewarded for it at the same rate as everyone else. That's really what I want to do with what I'm doing in Play to Earn.
No, so you're absolutely leveling the playing field. So this race to the bottom, or this basically exploitive capital, you're really saying here it doesn't matter where you live, it doesn't matter who you are. Honest work, honest pay. That's just it. And that honestly was the promise of globalization at one point. Raise the living standards up. It just so happens that it's happening through video games. I mean, that's a trip in
yeah,
itself.
yeah, it's absolutely amazing that like video games have been really good at designing these virtual economies for people to get lost in for hours and hours, and now we realize that we have the power to coordinate incentives and help people get paid and gamify the world of work and finance itself, because now you have a structure which is blockchain and cryptocurrency that allows for real world value to happen in these incentivization. So now I think actually video game designers will be some of the most important people in the planet, because they can coordinate the incentives of how people can get paid.
That is actually a very good statement. And that is something that we're also seeing in Web3 and just metaverse in general. Design, community building, niche communities, the understanding of human behavior and incentives, the most powerful things in the world, now actually being monetized. Let me ask you something. In the world of tokens and tokenomics and DAOs, do you think there'll be DAOs for everything, or is this going to only primarily be gaming related, or do you think this will spread to other aspects of life?
So I think of a DAO as a digital version of a company. The corporation itself has existed for maybe a few hundred years, and that was a radical breakthrough back then, when you created limited liability to corporations for. Yeah, for people who could put in money and not have liability beyond what was put in. And the DAO just goes beyond that and has a natively digital way to kind of confer and transfer ownership to people around the world at instant speed. So I think this will really change the way that work is organized around people, and there will be millions of billions of DAOs depending on what people want to do. In the same way that there are millions and millions of corporations.
That's pretty bold, man. So let me ask you something. For all the kids out there that are listening to this, I'm sure there's kids out there that are hearing them being like, wow, Gabby, you changed my life. I want to be like you. What should they do? Like, what would you tell the kids that want to follow you? What should they be doing? Where should they start?
So I always say this: you should lead with your curiosity and follow what is fun for you. Don't try to go for, what is going to make me the most money. Like really lead with your curiosity. Join a DAO, join an NFT project, be part of the community, and start contributing in your own way that you know how. So you might be a programmer, you might be a community organizer, you might be a really good meme maker, and all of these communities need this. And this is the way to kind of really understand what Web3 and how powerful communities are, is by actually joining and being part of one of these communities. And it doesn't matter how old you are. I know people who are 13 years old who are like really excellent NFT artists who have made a lot of money, but the money isn't the point. They're actually part of the community and doing something special.
So then at that moment in time, basically, as we look towards those kids that are going to come up, be full digital, full crypto natives, basically, is what they're going to
Crypto
be.
native, metaverse native. That's
Yeah,
right.
I mean, it's a brave new world out there. Do you think any one country or any one group is going to dominate, or is this finally the opportunity for everyone to get their piece?
Yeah, I think that the gains from this new online world are going to be a lot more distributed from before. And I also have to give a lot of credit to our investors, most of which are actually kind of in the US. Some of them are in Silicon Valley for spotting the talent and being able to back them. Some of our early investors, like Anil of Delphi Digital, Miko of Gumi, Linda of Scalar Capital, all the way up to Andreessen Horowitz, which made us their first investment out of a founder coming to Philippines. It wouldn't have happened without a lot of these people who are able to obtain the capital to be able to back founders from relatively unknown backgrounds from a country that they've never backed before and allow that talent to flourish. Fortunately, that is happening more and more now, and you're seeing more founders get back in places around the world that you would be seeing getting venture capital just maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
So for all the external developers out there that are basically kind of spent their years toiling in the muck, having to work for other people, is now the time for them to come in this area and say, "Hey, you know what? Leverage your capability and earn and get paid for what you know how to do." What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Now is the time. I mean, apart from the Axie team, the majority of whom are based in Vietnam, we're just seeing a ridiculous amount of talent from around the world creating products that are kind of Web3 first. And yeah, like if you're curious about it, like don't get hung up on, oh, I don't know anyone in the Philippines or Indonesia or Brazil who knows anything about this. Just dive in, join a community, and make something of your own.
That is some amazing advice. So, when are we going to be able to start getting into YGG? I'm sure there's people out there being like, "I would take my money now. How do I get into YGG? Where do we got to go to get ourselves loaded up? How can we get that?"
Well, first of all, I would invite people to join the community. Uh, our community primarily lives on Discord, so it's discord.gg/ygg. And then, kind of once you learn more about it, read some articles on our website. The token is available on the public right now. So, for example, if you have a MetaMask wallet, you can buy it on decentralized exchanges such as SushiSwap or Uniswap. If you have an exchange wallet, maybe exchanges like a Binance or a Hobie or an OKX, you can also get the YGG token.
And let me just ask you this question. You guys are seeing these other games coming up. Do you see anything on the horizon that you think is like, wow, like the next generation? Have you seen the next generation of these games? Like, we're always talking about next gen in the traditional space. Has next gen started coming in your way?
Well, the next gen that we're seeing is a reimagining of current game genres that have more play to earn components in them. And there's actually a lot of pretty interesting games along the way. Just a few that I'll name are games like Ember Sword or Guild of Guardians, Thetan Arena, Cyball. There's actually a lot more. But yeah, like the next few months are be a very interesting way for people to earn some money while playing games.
Gabby, honestly, I want to thank you for coming on to Video Games Real Talk and for basically talking to us about what you're doing. How can people follow you? Where can they basically get in and make sure they know what's going on with Yield Guild?
Yeah, just go to Twitter, twitter.com/Yield Guild. I'm also on Twitter. And you can find me on the YGG Discord as well. And yeah, just happy to chat with people there.
Thank you so much for your time. We're definitely going to have you back on here to help us understand the world of crypto gaming, NFTs. And you know what? As always, be an OG, staying true to yourself and true to the industry. We really thank you for that and sharing with our community. Uh, any last words, anything you'd like to impart on us for the community out there?
I would say that just start with an open mind and lead with your curiosity. There's a lot of people who are maybe very skeptical or even hostile to the concept, but once you actually start joining the community, you'll find that it's very welcoming and people are actually there to genuinely help each other and people want each other to succeed. So it's not like I've been in a lot of communities where there's been a lot of toxicity, and actually the kind of crypto NFT play to earn space has been one of the most welcoming that I've ever seen. So yeah, just don't be afraid to dive in.
Very good words, sir. Thanks again for coming in. And thank you to everyone out there listening for following us on this journey as Video Games Real Talk enters its second season. You can find us on your favorite podcast places from Apple iTunes to basically Spotify. Follow us on videogamesrealtalk.com. Hit us up at StarvUp on Twitter or VGRT on Twitter. Thanks again and stay tuned. Next week, we got another one for you. See you soon.